This is the BBC.
This podcast is supported by advertising outside the UK.
Everyone likes shopping online, but searching for coupon codes is kinda a bummer. So make saving online a breeze with Capital One Shopping. Capital One Shopping is a free tool that instantly searches for available coupon codes and automatically applies them at checkout. Just download Capital One Shopping to your computer and let it do the work for you. So easy, and you don't even need a Capital One card to use it. Capital One Shopping. It's kinda genius. What's in your wallet? Savings and available coupons vary.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Today, the Taliban leader who admits watching television and confesses he once heard a woman sing. In Canada, climate change and the environment have become major issues in the country's general election. We hear what happened when the Pope went to Hungary, unleashing an unusually frank exchange of views, and the people of Georgia, who risk their lives every year just so that you can have a Christmas tree. First, to people who crossed mountains in search of safety, but ended up being targeted by drones. Refugees have been fleeing Iran as the economic situation there gets ever worse, with food prices going up and shortages of clean water and power. Meanwhile, there are fears among some people that the country's about to become more oppressive, with a new hardline Islamist president in charge. All these things have prompted many Iranians to try to escape, and Iranian Kurds in particular have been seeking sanctuary in the Kurdish part of Iraq. Life there's not always easy. Within this exiled community there are armed groups determined to overthrow Iran's ayatollahs and their regime. And it's these groups which have now come under aerial attack, as Lizzie Porter explains.
One night in April last year, Azad, not his real name, stepped across the mountainous border from Iran into Iraq. His feet were injured from walking miles across rough ground. In a poor district of Erbil, the capital of the Kurdistan region of Iraq, the 28-year-old now sits on a swirly beige carpet in his brother's living room, surrounded by bowls of nuts and small glasses of sweet tea. Azad is an Iranian Kurd. He describes leaving his home, his wife and his child. "I had no job. There was no money either." He looks down at his grey sharwal, the loose trousers traditionally worn by Kurds. "I was hoping that the situation would get better, but it did not. So I had no other choice and came here." Azad is one of scores of people who have left Iran, some to Turkey, others to Iraq, as economic conditions back home worsen and political freedoms seem increasingly under threat. According to official statistics, there are currently around 10,500 Iranians registered as refugees in the semi-autonomous Kurdistan region of Iraq, although observers believe there are many more unaccounted for. But listening to the stories of Iranian Kurds here in Erbil, people are still coming. But escaping Iran does not mean that people's lives are a great deal easier in Iraqi Kurdistan. Azad says he earns less than £10 for 12 hours work in casual labour jobs here. Political inertia in the Iraqi capital Baghdad means that Iranian Kurds like him are unlikely to obtain Iraqi passports. Proposed legislation on giving them citizenship has never made it to a vote in the Iraqi parliament, with some lawmakers blaming that on pressure from Iran and its allies. Other people leave Iran for political reasons. Iranian Kurdish opposition groups with armed wings have bases in Iraqi Kurdistan. Many have waged decades-long campaigns against the Iranian government, which sees them as terrorist organisations. Last week, Iranian military forces targeted positions used by one opposition group, the Kurdistan Democratic Party Iran, the KDPI, using explosive drones. No one was killed, but it wasn't the first time that they have been targeted inside Iraqi Kurdistan. In 2018, Iran shot 7 ballistic missiles at the party's headquarters, killing more than a dozen people. Today, the offices have been rebuilt, and murals of the people killed cover the pockmarked buttermilk yellow walls. One hot August morning, on a hill above the small town of Koya, a group of new arrivals sit in a classroom belonging to the KDPI. Some are just 14 years old, having left Iran without their parents' permission. They have wide eyes and tiny limbs, their camouflage military uniforms rolled up at the hems. "I came here because every day I saw more oppression from the Islamic government. So I came here to be a Peshmerga," says one girl from western Iran, describing her desire to become a Kurdish fighter. Her huge brown eyes shine, and she speaks with a childlike enthusiasm. A Barbie pink exercise book with a princess on the cover sits in her lap. Her parents know she is here. I talk to them on the phone, she says. They are uneasy about me, but what to do? KDPI leader Khalid Azizi tells me that not all the new arrivals from Iran end up as armed fighters. That they are learning these military activities for 2 to 3 months is actually good for them, he says. But it does not mean that when they leave the military camp that they are organised into the Peshmerga. Many Iranians do not want to stay in Iraqi Kurdistan. Most want to go to Western Europe or Canada. But the routes there involve using people smugglers. They are expensive and etched with danger. As for legal routes, the UNHCR says it has only resettled a small number of Iranians from Iraq in the past 5 years. For now, Azad will continue to try to find work. Now my daughter is 5 years old, and I have a lot of dreams for her, he says. For now, he has left her behind over the border. I really want to make a future for her, so she does not remain in Iran and have the same future as mine.
Lizzie Porter. So, have they changed or not? The crucial question being asked about the Taliban as they secure their hold on Afghanistan. Last time they ran the country in the late 90s, women found themselves excluded from most public roles and forced to cover up from head to toe. Music was banned, most other forms of entertainment too, and perceived infractions of the law saw harsh punishment. With the Taliban now back in power in Kabul, some detect a new tone. They give news conferences. They've said they want to work with the international community. But this week they said that women would not be allowed to study alongside men. And there have been reports of revenge killings carried out against those who worked for the previous government. For Sahar Zand, this has all brought back memories of the time she went to meet a senior Taliban representative, one who did at least admit to having watched TV.
Out of the window of the armoured car, I could see street food vendors and children laughing as they flew kites. Beyond them, in the distance, the snow-covered mountains around Kabul. Then, the radio report. There's been another suicide attack in the city. 5 civilians are confirmed dead. Many more injured. Officials suspect it was the Taliban. And there I was, on my way to interview a senior Taliban leader, Molavi Qalamuddin. He'd been Afghanistan's deputy minister for the promotion of virtue and the elimination of vice in 2001, when the Taliban was last in power. Our car pulled up in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. I was in black from head to toe, my hair fully covered, as I followed behind my male guide towards a deep blue metal gate. A young bearded man welcomed us into the courtyard. He was wearing khaki trousers, a traditional Afghan shalwar tunic, and an Apple Watch. He told us his father, the man we were there to see, was praying and would be with us soon. The courtyard overlooks the city, and I was mesmerized by the view. How tiny the houses and humans looked from the distance. I remembered the news about the suicide attack and wondered if that's how the Taliban see people. Small, insignificant. The sun led us into a darkened room. There was a long shelf stacked with books about Islam and Sharia. And there, in the middle of it, something truly shocking. A TV. Something the Taliban had banned in 1996. I wondered if it indicated a shift in views, a sign that the Taliban were becoming ever so slightly more tolerant. Assalamu alaikum, Molavi Qalamuddin announced his entrance. He stood tall, with a long black bushy beard, thick glasses, a grey turban on his head, dressed in a white Afghan shalwar. I looked down and greeted him in a low, apologetic voice. An uncomfortable necessity. I thought it might help if I had to ask him some difficult questions later. He instructed me to sit down at the far end of the pillows, with my guide in between us so that we didn't face each other. Despite the fact that I speak Dari, his language, fluently, when he talked, he spoke to my guide. Our party was formed 40 years ago, he told us. Our goal is to serve our religion, Islam, and our country. What changes would you like to see? I asked. There is no stability in this nation, he explained, because this country is drowning in moral corruption, and the only solution is for it to be governed based on strict Sharia law. I asked where that leaves music and media freedom. He answered slowly and thoughtfully, with a slight frown. Anything that's provocative and could create sexual excitement is haram. It's sinful, he replied. When it comes to musical instruments or a woman's voice, it's provocative and tempting for men. You are wearing the hijab and are fully covered. That's okay. But your voice, when it's singing or talking, should not be heard in public. Have you really never heard a woman sing, though? I couldn't help but ask. He surprised me when he admitted he had. And that was not okay, he said. I made a mistake and committed a sin. Emboldened, I pointed to the television and asked if he ever watched any of the new Afghan entertainment programs. The atmosphere grew more tense. What these people do is against our culture, against our religion and morals, and I can't tolerate them, he explained. May God damn them all. So what did he watch? Nature documentaries, he said with a smile. But they have music, I replied. Isn't that haram or forbidden? He looked straight at me, his sharp gaze suddenly chilling. Our time is up, he said curtly, moving to stand. You need to leave. For all their posturing towards modernity, like the presence of a TV or allowing an interview with a female journalist, I couldn't shake the image of ordinary people being at the mercy of an old man, sat up above them on a hill, convinced that the very sound of a woman's voice was against God and must not be heard.
Sahar Zand. It must have seemed like a good idea at the time. Last month, Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, called a snap election. Polling suggested he was popular among voters, with many crediting him for a relatively smooth handling of the COVID crisis. This, it seemed, might be the moment to go to the country and perhaps win a majority of seats, something which eluded him last time round. We don't know if Mr. Trudeau is now regretting his decision, but he may well come to. The election takes place on Monday, with some predicting he'll lose power altogether. One particular area where he's having to defend his record is on the environment, which is proving to be an unusually important issue in this contest, says Jatinder Sidhu, who's on Canada's west coast.
This is the smell of negligence on the part of both the provincial and federal governments. Grand Chief Stuart Phillip, the most senior Indigenous leader in British Columbia, was talking about smoke from the forest fires which ravaged the province this summer. The fires, sparked in the aftermath of this June's intense heatwave, were responsible for at least 500 deaths in British Columbia alone. Days after breaking the record twice for the hottest temperature ever recorded in Canada, 121 degrees Fahrenheit, the small town of Lytton burned to the ground. And there weren't just fires. The heat melted glaciers, causing flash floods. When Justin Trudeau finally called the election 2 years into his 4-year term, he wanted it to be about healthcare and pandemic management. And well, he might. Canada has one of the highest vaccination rates in the world. But the extreme weather focused Canadians' attention on climate change as never before. Canada has now seen 3 summers of devastating wildfires in 5 years. There's an ongoing progression of what feels like more and more extreme weather, pollster Shachi Curl of the Angus Reid Institute tells me. It's become the defining issue for many voters. Since Justin Trudeau came to power in 2015, carbon emissions have risen every year, mainly due to oil and gas extraction. Grand Chief Stuart Phillip's assessment of Trudeau's record is withering. He said all the right things, however, the government didn't follow through. Canada is home to the 3rd largest oil reserves in the world, and 5% of GDP comes from oil and gas. Trudeau's Liberals say they want to use those revenues to invest in the transition away from fossil fuels. That's like buying a tobacco company and saying, we're going to use the money made to pay for throat cancer, says Charlene Alec from the Tsleil-Waututh First Nation. We're standing on a beach in North Vancouver, on the Indigenous group's reserve overlooking the Burrard Inlet. Most of the shoreline around the water, just outside the city of Vancouver, is forested. But, disfiguring a growing section of the hillside opposite, just over a kilometre, is a jumble of storage tanks, very tall razor wire fences and construction equipment. The Trans Mountain or TMX pipeline, designed to carry bitumen extracted from tar or oil sands in Alberta, ends here. Charlene tells me the noise and pollution goes on at all hours of the night. The seals and the fish don't come in here because of all that pile driving, Charlene tells me. The Tsleil-Waututh First Nation Indigenous group engaged in legally mandated government consultations and conducted their own assessments of the TMX project as part of their stewardship policy. We show up with our chief, technical staff and lawyers all ready to talk. They send a note taker and then say, we'll get back to you, Charlene says. 5 minutes later, they go ahead and push it through. Justin Trudeau's Liberals maintain that carbon pricing and a target of net zero emissions by 2050 will help Canada meet its commitments. But opponents point to the TMX pipeline, which was nationalised by Ottawa when the owners decided to pull the plug in the face of fierce environmental, Indigenous and local opposition. The federal government bought a pipeline. They're investing in a dying, sunsetting industry, Charlene says. For the Tsleil-Waututh and other Indigenous groups across Canada, most politicians are not adequately grappling with the climate crisis. The main opposition Conservative Party opposed carbon taxes and the Paris Climate Agreement for years, but have now embraced both. But they remain conflicted. Their biggest support base is in oil and gas producing provinces, particularly Alberta. The left-of-centre NDP, traditionally backed by unionised workers, has promised tougher emissions targets, hoping to pick off Green voters. The Green Party itself is struggling with internal divisions. All the parties have promised to improve relations with the 5% of Canadians who are Indigenous. But Charlene says they must first acknowledge that we're in an emergency. Before we can get to what they call reconciliation, there has to be truth. Now is the time for Canada to take responsibility for what has happened and to make it better.
Jatinder Sidhu. There was a time when papal visits were relatively simple affairs. The Pope showed up in a country, held a mass or two for some of his flock, and glad-handed all the right people, both religious and secular, perhaps expressing his admiration for whichever country he was in and his best wishes for those who run it. But it's not quite so simple with the current pontiff. Pope Francis has a reputation for speaking his mind with unprecedented frankness, and did so this week when he travelled to Hungary. The Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, also has quite a reputation for plain speaking, with hardline views on Islam and immigration in particular. So what happened when the two met? Nick Thorpe was in Budapest to find out.
"I'd like to be a fly on the wall at that meeting," said one of my editors that morning. But if there were any flies present when the 84-year-old Argentinian pontiff met the 58-year-old populist Prime Minister Viktor Orban, they probably didn't hear anything either. The 40-minute-long meeting took place in the magnificent Roman Hall of the Fine Arts Museum in Budapest. Glorious peacocks representing eternal life, Saints Elizabeth and Margaret, and a youthful Christ holding a lamb all look down on the scene. According to a Vatican statement, topics discussed included the protection of the family and the environment. As they were all sitting so far away from each other, they must have had to shout across the echoing hall. In the photograph, the Hungarian Prime Minister appears to be frowning. Outside, in the 30-plus centigrade furnace of this September Sunday, the faithful sang their hearts out. One choir, especially assembled for the occasion, included over 2,000 singers. From inside the cool of the museum, Viktor Orban posted a photograph of himself shaking hands with the pontiff, with the words, "I asked Pope Francis not to allow Christian Hungary to perish." For something to perish, I suppose it must be under threat. One of the keys to Mr. Orban's success as a politician in the past 3 decades has been his ability to maintain that sense of threat and present himself as the person best able to protect his nation. From the vestiges of communism, from liberalism, then from the alleged hordes of mostly Muslim migrants hammering at the door of the Hungarian house, as he put it. But the man who portrays himself as the defender of Christian Europe faced a dilemma when he stood face to face with the defender of the faith. The Pope just doesn't believe in the same demons as the Prime Minister, and while Mr. Orban built fences to keep migrants out, Pope Francis gathered some under his wings. From the notorious Moria refugee camp on the Greek island of Lesbos, the Pope took 3 families of 12 people, all Syrian Muslims, back to Italy on the plane with him. On the day, Pope Francis was far too kind to engage in any kind of verbal sparring. He spoke not so much to the Prime Minister as past him. His main message was to the tens of thousands of Christians who waited hours in the heat for a glimpse of the head of their church. Religious feeling is the lifeblood of this nation, so attached to its roots, Pope Francis preached. But the cross, stuck in the ground, not only makes us root ourselves well, but also reaches up and extends its arms to all, he continued. I wish you to be like that, grounded and open, deeply rooted and respectful of others. The others here clearly imply the stranger in all her or his forms, a gentle riposte to Orban's asylum policy. In the days since the visit, the government spokesman Zoltán Kovács has fiercely attacked the Western media for, as he put it, fake news, speculation and misinterpretation. These journalists are indoctrinating and fueling anti-Orban behaviour in the minds of Western Europeans, he continued. So did we really misrepresent the papal visit? Journalists often do seek conflict and contradiction, but this Pope dares to speak his mind, and we journalists quoted him verbatim. Migrant has become a dirty word in Hungary since the 2015 refugee crisis, as has the word multicultural, and that is largely the work of the government media. But the Pope dared to pronounce both words in a positive context in Budapest. Different nationalities, minorities, religious denominations and migrants have also shaped this country into a multicultural community, Pope Francis told Hungarian bishops. Then the Pope was gone as swiftly as he came to the next stop, Slovakia, and 3 days of meetings in 4 cities. The highlight was a visit to the Lunik 9 housing estate in the eastern city of Košice, where many Roma or Gypsy people live, to plead for an end to segregation and prejudice against them as well.
Nick Thorpe in Budapest. Now, I'm sure you think it's way too early to be thinking about Christmas, but for some people, September is precisely the month when it's most on their minds. These are the pine seed pickers of Georgia. Every year at this time, they climb their country's giant fir trees to get hold of the pine cones which grow on them. Inside are the seeds which are then planted for Christmas trees. In fact, most of the Christmas trees in Europe are grown from seeds that come from Georgia. It's a huge business. And yet, as Amelia Stewart has found, the work of those who do the actual seed picking is often poorly paid and can also be very dangerous.
This is where the bears like to eat too, says Matto, watching as I push my way further into a tangle of blackberry bushes to reach the ripest, juiciest ones. Stuffing berries into my mouth, I peer into the emerald gloom around us for signs of any fruit-loving ursine companions. But all that comes from the shadows is a cooling scent of pine. Matto, have you ever seen a bear? I ask as casually as I can. Yes, actually quite recently. It was a black one, about 30 metres in front of me, walking along the trail. I spin nervously around to face him. What did you do? I ask. I took my phone out to take a picture, he replies with a grin. Tourniquet Matsubaridze, or Matto for short, is my unflappable 25-year-old Georgian guide, and beyond a ponytail, the only thing we have in common is a love of the outdoors. Slight but muscular, with pale skin, freckles and wild auburn hair, Matto is a jack of all outdoor trades, a mountain guide, a ski and rock climbing guide, and a BMX bike guide too. And he also joins the annual harvesting of pine seeds in the forest here. They grow from the Nordman firs, distinctive, towering conifers, which are Europe's favourite Christmas tree. You know, more people die climbing these trees than buy beer, Matto says, trying perhaps to be reassuring. Bear, I correct him, not beer, as he scans the trees on all sides of us, pointing out the pale-coloured cones clustered at the treetops. We're trekking in the Ratcha region of northwest Georgia, a wild and remote highland area of the Greater Caucasus Mountains, which backs onto territories fought over with Russia and remain a matter of dispute. The region is one of the poorest in the country, with few jobs available and little infrastructure for tourism. But it's renowned for its natural beauty, good wine and smoked ham. Searching around the base of a tree, Matto finds a fir cone and hands it to me. Weighty as a duck egg, the rough exterior is a pretty lime colour. Inside the cone, dark pink flesh protects a dense cluster of waxen seeds. Turning it over in my hand, I wonder if it'll fit in my rucksack. Don't even think of it, says Matto. They're really sticky. I had to shower in petrol once just to get the glue off. The Christmas tree industry is big business in Europe, with about 45 million Nordman firs selling every year across the continent. The majority of the seeds for those trees come from Georgia. Considered the king of the Christmas tree, the Nordman fir is elegant and can be as tall as 60 metres when fully grown. During harvest time in September, men, women and children come from small villages across the region to pick the pine cones, climbing right up to reach the treetops. Many climb without any safety equipment, and each year 1 or 2 fall to their deaths. Many are paid just 35p a kilo of cones gathered, a pittance despite their crucial role in a multi-million-dollar industry. Unlike many cone hunters, Matto wears a harness, thick rubber gloves and a helmet because he works for a fair trade company that cares about safety equipment and decent wages for all. Once he has shimmied to the treetop, he pulls off the cones, tossing them to the forest floor far below, where other workers collect them to be bagged and driven in refrigerated trucks to tree nurseries across Europe. It's hot in the forest, and the clamour of insects is like a polyphonic orchestra in full flow. Sweat trickles down my face as I squint up at the row of trees in front of me. Perhaps it's the heat and the arduous trek, but the thought of climbing to the top of one of these giants without a rope, only to fall into the arms of a ravenous bear, is enough to turn my legs to jelly. I stay earthbound, but happy in the beauty of the woods. It would be good to encourage tourists here, give the people more opportunities for work, says Matto. I couldn't agree more. Although I'm reluctant to share this pristine wilderness, he's right. There should be more guides like Matto, helping to put the region on the map, rather than risking their lives as Christmas tree angels for little in return.
Amelia Stewart. And that's all from us today. Next week, 2 programmes, on Thursday at 11 o'clock and Saturday at 11:30 as usual. Do join us.
Lifelines, a new series of the multi-award-winning Radio 4 drama, now available as a podcast.
SOS.
Sometimes heart-stopping.
Help us.
Sometimes heart-starting.
No air.
Always matters of life and death.
Ambulance service. Is the patient breathing and conscious?
Subscribe to Lifelines on BBC Sounds.
The one constant in the world is change. To succeed in business and life, you need to progress with it. Constantly question, adapt to new information, and rethink. Cass Business School has done just that. Changed. Introducing Bayes Business School. For those with the vision and courage to do things differently, the future is yours. Bayes Business School. Always learning.